Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the show. For those of you who are new, this is how these things normally work. We do an opening monologue, which is basically the equivalent of those adverts that used to happen at the cinema. You remember the cinema? Where they would tell you to go drink Bacardi and chase a powerboat off a pier.
Really?
It was the early 1990s, it was a different time. Basically, it's an excuse for you to get comfortable, you to get situated, get hydrated, get some stream snacks, all that good stuff. Then, after that, we'll catch you up with what's been going on with us this week. I'm Alistair. 8 feet to my left is the amazing Marguerite, who's on production and in the chat tonight.
Hi!
And we'll be doing the penultimate, not the ultimate, section of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by Ursula K. Vernon, writing as T. Kingfisher. And then we will do some shenanigans. But before all of that, before all of those things happen, it is time for the monologue.
Oh, you forgot to say thank you for the fan art.
Oh, I did completely. My deepest apologies. Massive, massive thanks to Imperiosism for the Fat Bear Week comic that opens the show. That's honestly one of my favourite bits of Peter Lucas fan art I've seen in a very, very long time. I really like that.
Now we do the monologue.
And now, the monologue.
And there's no button for the monologue.
I know, I've just pulled it up. It's all good.
I've changed it. I've thrown you for a loop. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Watch Dogs London. A review. Diane Ganguly is a totally ordinary Londoner, one of the 9 million NPCs who put the Legion in Watch Dogs Legion, since they can all be recruited and made playable. She's a talent agent in her early 30s with a pet owl, an anti-immigration voting record, and a history of going to furry conventions. As I said, totally normal. Until now, that is. Underground hacker collective DedSec has just contacted Diane, tasking her with rebuilding the local resistance against omniscient fascist security megacorp, Albion. The odds, it's made clear, are overwhelming. Diane will have to keep to the shadows, working every advantage she has if the renewed DedSec London is to survive. Naturally then, Diane immediately steals a high-powered sports car and embarks on a full-on 100-mile-an-hour Ragnarok of a joyride through Westminster, while retro footy belter Three Lions blasts from the stereo.
So is that one corpse or 3?
Possibly 3.
Very well.
This was the first 5 minutes of my game, and it's good goofs for sure, but it's also a perfect illustration of my biggest stumbling block with Watch Dogs Legion. Here is a game that's extremely serviceable as a cartoonish urban mayhem generator, in the vein of a GTA or a Saints Row, with the additional flavours of dodgy geezers and hacking, but it also wants to be an extremely earnest game about technology, personal liberty, transhumanism, and authoritarian oppression. These are two very tough things to achieve at the same time, and on a holistic level, it doesn't really work. I will say this up front, Watch Dogs Legion actually manages much greater political coherence than I was expecting. I think it abstracts the struggle against fascism a little too far into Saturday morning simplicity. You replace Albion propaganda with a stylish DedSec resist poster. And when you do, Camden's defiance meter has risen by 1 point, which feels grating at best and depressing at worst in a world that has slid halfway into the game's setting over the course of its development.
Where you have to develop reputation per section?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to be here forever. How many boroughs are there in London? Oh,
All.
God.
There is no room here for the banality of evil. But, content warning swears, fuck it. It's at least unapologetic about which side of history it wants to be on, and there's little bet hedging here for the sake of being apolitical. So on the whole, good job. Unfortunately, all of the mega-sincere hacktivist chat, the full in-universe podcasts on the ethical minefields of civic connectivity, and the reams and reams of tech-heavy lore feel entirely at odds with the crash-bang core blimey way the game is played. I never felt like a hacker in a desperate resistance movement. I felt like an arsehole wizard with a smartphone instead of a wand, forcing a world of machines to wreak havoc on itself as they capered between blinking pellets of arbitrary achievement on the map. Never once did I have to download drivers, switch anything on or off again, create an account, identify the squares containing traffic lights, or go through any of the other purgatorial frustrations involved in making computers do anything useful. I just sat on a cargo drone like a cackling goblin swooping over the Thames and commanding boats to smash into each other for ages. And there is a truly glorious photo caption, which is, "Oh, what a lovely, orderly day of commerce on the river." It would be such a shame if someone decided to barge in. Sounds of revving engines, maritime destruction.
Sunglasses, smash cuts.
These riverside jaunts were cracking fun. So were Diane's chilling rampages and my petty afternoons spent frightening people with hijacked drones. But it all felt really off script. And since there were no real consequences to these adventures, no matter how high the body counts got, I felt more motivated to dig around with the Internet of Things you can fuck up than play the story crafted for me by Ubisoft. The main plot soon became the side quest, and its story of a David and Goliath struggle felt increasingly alien to the game I was actually playing. And this isn't some petty highbrow quibble. Play and premise undermine each other at every turn in Watch Dogs Legion. The game does everything possible to telegraph Albion as this monolithic, all-seeing epitome of the corporate surveillance state, but they never feel remotely credible as a threat. It's so easy to run rings around their rent-a-grunts that I ended up feeling more sorry for them than anything. Poor bastards can surveil their way out of a paper bag.
Oh no, they're Lone Star from Shadowrun. They're supposed to be
Yes.
the big baddie, and they're who you go to when you need to steal a good car.
Yep. Beast, and the next photo caption is "Beasted in the kidneys."
Try again.
Beasted in the kidneys by a man in a gold puffer jacket. What a way to go. This is testament, I suppose, to the breadth of the problem-solving toolkit on offer, where the many kinds of hackable objects in the world and the way they can interact. Putting my getaway car on auto drive, for example, and then flying a drone behind it in order to have a good old laugh compelling ambulances to smash into my pursuers, made me feel like a very clever sausage indeed. And this is, of course, what the Watch Dogs series does best. And because it all works so well as a great big chaos generator, the world building ends up feeling superfluous, with its heart in the right place, but quite annoying, like a teenager who takes every possible opportunity to mention they're a communist. Everything is drenched in zeitgeist. People mutter about the spineless government gutting the NHS. A sneering far-right dickhead called Nigel keeps coming on the telly to gloat. Everything is esports this, crypto that, dark web forums the other. God, does nobody in this city just enjoy gardening?
We can't afford gardens in London. What are you thinking?
It all wants to feel so current and so real and so punk, and sometimes it gets to the edge of managing. These are good writers, but it serves only to constantly winch my disbelief into the air, only for it to crash into the ground moments later as once again everything dissolves into an EastEnders-themed Westworld. At one point, while my bother goblin was cruising up Borough High Street...
I'm sorry, did he just say bother goblin? Okay.
On his faithful steed, the game recreated the view of the walk to London Bridge Station from an old job with such devastating accuracy that I felt a wave of visceral depression sweep over me before even realising what Proustian sorcery was at work.
I could blow up my own office building?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
And we have Ride of the Valkyries on MP3.
Oh dear.
It is, as I have said, a right laugh when it does so, and not just because I find Cockney hollering extremely funny. By and large, the mayhem is every bit as mayhemic as you would expect from such a sprawling, high-budget game. The side activities, bare-knuckle fighting, parcel delivery, football keepy-uppy, darts, photo mode, and so on, are solid to good. The close combat offers satisfyingly meaty feedback, even if it's a little shallow, and there's a vast amount of content to get through. But as decadent as it sounds, this embarrassment of riches is exactly what you'd expect to see from a flagship release in this genre. What, if anything, is new here? The next photo caption reads simply, "Diane annihilating yet another chump in the carnival of fists." What separates Watch Dogs Legion from the pack, besides its setting, is the Legion. The fact the game has, at the same time, got no main character at all, and 9 million of the bastards. It is indeed possible to play as anyone. But is it any good? Mostly yes. Here's Diane again. She's tearing through the street on a pinched motorbike, letting the beast inside run free to the upbeat sound of Bedeiled Skinner and the lightning seats, when she sees an interesting-looking pedestrian. They'd make a good dead secker, she decides, in a fraction of a second. So she makes a gut-wrenching 90-degree turn, slams into the brick wall next to her target.
Stop it!
At roughly half the speed of sound.
So this is attention deficit in game, is what I'm
Slams into the brick wall next to her target at half the speed of sound and manages to suplex.
Well, you're giving everybody lots
Oh,
of
boy.
serotonin tonight.
Oh, boy.
I'm glad we're not doing a charity corpse count.
We're getting there.
Ooh, we can do this. We can do this. Breathe.
And manages to suplex them into the asphalt as she is hurled from the wreckage. You look like someone who wants to take their city back, she says to her potential recruit. And rather than Sorry.
Breathe, honey.
And rather than collapsing from injury, the pedestrian sizes up the Nightmare Valkyrie and proceeds to chat away. They eagerly confess not just to family members' recent spot of bother involving deeply illegal activities, but their own willingness to join DedSec should Diane take care of the situation. You know, like you would to a stranger, asking enigmatic questions in the heart of a police state. Oh, apropos of nothing, there are rocket-propelled explosive drones you can chuck like darts. It's great. There is a colossal volume of writing in the game.
Please have a drink of water, please.
And a library of voice acting to match. So it takes a long time for these situations to get into the territory of, here we go, this guy again. And when that does happen, at least that guy will look very different. They'll probably look ridiculous, of course, dressed like they've been sent into Cyberdog with a grand at the nadir of a week-long acid marathon, but that's the near future for you. Recruits all fall into a massive range of general classes, each with their own associated skills and weapons. The mission introducing the recruitment system, for example, sees you pick up a construction worker who has a big wrench for braining people, and the pet cargo drone I so enjoyed goblining about on. Any operative can also access a wide range of gadgets and weapons from the central DedSec pool as you unlock them. Beyond that, recruits Mad Libs-esque backstory. This is Derek Darkweb's Savaloy. He's a tax preparer with an AK-47 and a terminal illness. His mum's a terrorist. We'll give them various perks and characteristics, and we'll also make them handle slightly differently. But at the end of the day, there's only so much variation that could have been built into the NPC base, while leaving missions achievable by any recruit, and leaving the game possible to develop. Consequently, London's inhabitants are, without exception, weapons-grade beasts, ready to commit mass murder at a moment's notice. You wonder why they've not trampled Albion into atoms long before you stepped in. And there's little compulsion at all to roleplay. Everyone sort of feels like a golem into which your malevolent presence can be decanted. But that's all fair enough. I think Watch Dogs Legion does a damn good job of obfuscating the edges of the players anyone mechanic, and it's genuinely unlike anything I've played before. It's hugely freeing, leaping between bodies on a whim, since I've been playing on Iron Man mode, where your recruits can get perma-dannied if they take one too many full Englishes from a pack of rowdy Ronalds. I felt at least some of the tension bled out when my adversaries proved to be so technologically hapless come back into the game. I would have enjoyed Watch Dogs Legion so much more if it had just leaned into full-on Guy Ritchie nonsense with its tone. I really do appreciate what it's trying to do, but the end result is like Jason Statham beating you to death with a book of Nietzsche's aphorisms. It is still Jason fucking Statham, and you are still getting battered. While I may not identify with any of my gorillas in their grab-bag backstories, nor feel any sense of real investment in the fate of DedSec as a whole, I'm still attached to this strange band of possessed berserkers. We've had a good time together in this nonsense dystopian playground. When Construction Goblin finally angers one boat too many, or when Diane discovers the limits to Ghost.
Okay, start over.
Oh boy.
Breathe. Breathing it faster so it's going to make it less funny. It's okay.
Or when Diane discovers the limits to God's tolerance to 3 lions and is rightly obliterated. I will miss them. For those of you still watching, that was by Nate Crowley. And Nate is a friend of the show and has a unique and special brain.
We're saying you're laughing so hard the camera was shaking.
Oh my god. Hi everyone, how are you? I'm fine.
Have another sip of liquid, I think.
Significant tea.
Oh.
Right. So that was the opening monologue, and that's given you all time to get good and settled and watch me completely lose my shit. What's new with us this week? Well, for a start, thanks, Ocean. Check out my boy's new chapeau.
It's very shiny.
Look at this. This is amazing.
And it's all handmade. He's got a little, Chungus has a little mushroom beret now. He's very cute. Cute little Chungus. There we go. Promotion. Are you okay? Are you
I'm okay.
breathing?
I'm good. I'm good. So yes, new Chungus hat, which is always, they're in fact a pretty fun guy.
Oh, did you just?
That was the chat. They made me do it.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Rank and file. Thanks for that. Ryan, is that you? This is all your fault.
Oh, superb.
Oh,
So yeah, that happened. Coming up on the 31st, coming up on this Friday, which is not the 31st, Rusty Quill patrons will get access to the episode of Enthusiasm concerning horror, presented by the amazing Helen with Ty, Johnny Big Streams, and myself as the guests. This was really, really good fun, and I'm really looking forward to people hearing it. Then on Saturday, the 31st of October, starting at 2 p.m. and finishing When We All Die at 2:05.
Hey now!
Um,
I hope to get a little more gameplay into that. I'm making stream snacks and like a wardrobe change.
There are costume changes. We are going ham on this one. Marguerite, myself, Alex, and Hannah from Rusty Quill will be playing ham. Will be playing the Dark Anthology Little Hope, in which a whole bunch of kids stop off in a small town where daytime is a myth and small children with Yorkshire voices explain about how it's time the witch got them. It'll be great.
2 p.m. GMT.
2 p.m. GMT. Yeah, that will be when it will be taking place. Also, apparently there will be Rusty Quill swag announcements around 1 p.m. I don't know whether these are going to be presented in the manner of Mike pretending he's a character selection screen and no one telling him when the camera is off him, like last time, but I hope they will. Also, coming up later on the show in November, on the 18th, we have Ursula herself, who's coming on to talk about gardening and Wizard's Guide and exactly how it feels to smash an entire readership's emotions into pieces and use it as fertilizer. It'll be great. And then we have, on the 25th, Mr. Jonathan Sims is coming on to talk about 13 Stories, his first ever debut horror novel, which I am super excited about on both fronts. They're amazing people and they're ridiculously good guests. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how all of this plays out. Other stuff that's been going on recently. We have so many deadlines. Oh my god, I actually think the deadlines may be trying to kill us. This week's TFL is the Halloween special. For the full, it is my newsletter. It is twice the normal size, and it has hasn't almost killed me. It's just been an awful lot of work. I also appear to be about to write some more stuff about Stargate for the companion app, which is really nice. And then there's the small matter of NaNoWriMo arriving next month, which is also next week.
Next week is a week we are leaving time for emotions. Aren't we?
Yes, because of NaNoWriMo. Oh, of course. But and also there is also one of the events of which we do not speak its name.
No, you can. It starts with E and ends with election.
Thank you for throwing the L in there just for a second. I thought this could go quite badly. Also there's the US election next week, and strangely we have something of a vested interest in that. So next week is going to be processing some feelings. Yes. And on top of all that, I'm doing a course, and it's really good. I got accepted onto the Writing the Other course for writing fat characters, and it's kind of blowing my mind. I have some homework, which I need to get done this week, and it's a single 2-hour-ish lecture presented by two fantastic lecturers, and it has completely flipped around how I think about writing characters of size, and to a lesser extent, how I think about perceiving characters of size. And I am a character of size. So it has been very therapeutic is perhaps the incorrect word. Cathartic is massively the right word, and empowering. I really, really dug it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what it does to the novel, which I will be revising after I finish the edits for the Doctor Who book, and hopefully blast out the draft of something for Nano this year. Did I mention there's a lot on? There's a lot on.
It's only Tuesday, Lemon.
It's only Tuesday. It's Wednesday, right?
Today's Wednesday.
Yes.
There's just so much going on, but we need to get you a break in amongst all of that.
That would be really lovely.
Shall we stream the book?
Oh yeah. See, this is how crazy things have been recently. This is the official Escape Pod anthology. This was published by Titan this week. Look at the pod. Look at it. Look how great it is. This is so fucking cool. Murren Divya did an incredible job assembling this, and Titan were just amazingly good to work with. And we really, really want to do the same thing for Pseudopod next year. And then Podcastle the year after. And then Cast of Wonders the year after that.
Wouldn't that be great?
Because I want a box set.
I know. I want a whole matching set. Wouldn't that be fantastic? So, lots of orders. It's out now in the UK. It comes out in next month in the US.
Thanks, Obama.
Yes, your favorite story.
I love that. I just... The part of my brain that is permanently amused by something has actually just had the phrase "bother goblin" replace that, but you know.
Shall we give a quick recap and get into the story?
Let's do that. Previously, bong bong.
Thank
You're welcome. Previously on A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, Mona is a 14-year-old baking apprentice of sorts
she's an apprentice.
who lives with her aunt and uncle in a really very nice, very peaceful city. And this is a world where entirely random people can do magic, but really narrow band magic. A neighbour of her aunt's is a carpenter who can ensure that no wood ever breaks on him or is never knotted. Mona can talk to bread. Mona's bread always rises. Mona can animate gingerbread men as cookies, and it's kind of a gimmick in the shop. Mona also, when her powers first began to manifest, accidentally created Bob. Bob is a sourdough starter. Bob is sentient, and Bob is carnivorous. And Bob loves Mona, and really isn't too sure about anybody else. And by and large, Mona's life's pretty great until the dead girl shows up in the bakery, and she gets swept up into this conspiracy being perpetrated by Lord Oberon, who is one of the senior politicians in the city, and is basically trying to take it over via bloodless coup. And foment hatred against magic users in the city, which will allow him to basically fully take over and ensure that an invading army can come in relatively bloodlessly now that he has manipulated events. So the army is 3 days away. Mona, aided by the brother of the girl who was murdered, Spindle, and by various other people, including Knackering Mole, a extremely PTSD-riddled wizard whose ability involves resurrecting dead horses, wants to do something about this. And this all culminates in Mona and Spindle literally climbing the duchesses of the city's toilet, climbing out of it, and explaining the situation to her. And that's when she reveals that she's knew all along and is powerless and terrified to do anything about it. That doesn't last too long. Mona and Spindle and the Duchess, aided by a couple of the Duchess's guards, and briefly by the other last wizard left in the city before he too is murdered, successfully get a message out to the army. They're coming back. The only problem is that Oberon's forces, Oberon, who is a poop, by the way, just to be absolutely clear, Oberon has been exiled as well, but his army is 2 days away. The city's army is 3 days away. The only magic user they have can do magic involving bread. And that's when Mona gets devious. The last couple of parts have involved the creation of weaponized sourdough starter, including filling it full of peppers and just really sharp, angry things to be thrown over the walls at invaders like hot oil. And the last part was essentially yeasty Pacific Rim, with where Mona, aided by all the blacksmiths in the city, creates these huge 12-foot-long cookie sheets and cooks colossal gingerbread men on them. And basically a lot of what we did last week was her working out how to get them to stand up and how to do sympathetic magic with them and what happens when their feet don't work right. Also, thank you, Aussie Scribbler, also the crookies. The crookies are slightly larger gingerbread men filled with rage, who Mona has deployed and sent out, led by her smaller gingerbread man and Spindle, to cause as much mischief as possible, like nails in beds, setting fire to shoelaces, all that kind of stuff. It's going well, but there are things which are starting to go wrong. Mona can sense any time one of the gingerbread men is destroyed, and the army is very, very close. And that is where we pick up.
So, while Alistair remembers to have a drink, make sure you have a beverage of your own, a stream snack, if you need to attend to any pets or medications, or get a pillow, or take a stretch, or, get a kitty or anything like that. We are about to get going where are we?
Chapter 32.
Alright, here we go.
Chapter 32. An hour before dawn, Joshua came out to the courtyard. We'd raised the last golem. There were 7 of them, and I knew from one look at Joshua's face that we would not have time for an 8th. Time to go to the gate, he said. Duchess is already there, arranging the troops. Mona, he stopped there, because if he kept talking, he would have had to ask a 14-year-old girl to come to the front lines of a battle, and he hated it, and he knew he had to do it, and I knew I had to come because somebody had to tell the golems what to do. This is a lot to not actually say. I hunched my shoulders and I said, yeah, let's go. We loaded the wagons with leftover dough. There was still a lot of it, maybe 2 wagons full, although Our Lady of Sorrowful Angels only knew what it was going to do with it at the front lines without an oven. Still, we brought it. Between the wagons, bringing their barrel-shod feet down with a sound like gigantic hoofbeats, walked the golems. They were staying upright. That gave me hope. Each one of them carried a fence post in one hand to use as a club. Argonel had offered to commandeer the huge ceremonial axe that the Duchess's very remote ancestors had used to chop the heads off bulls. I declined. On the one hand, an axe takes a lot more brains to work than a club, and on the other, I still felt kind of bad for all the ancestral bulls. Aunt Tabitha had put an icing face on each one, though the later golems did not have angry eyebrows, and the last 3 didn't even have mouths. Still, there was no one else in the streets, so we reached the gate just as that odd, greyish-brown light that precedes dawn was starting to seep over the walls. On our side of the big gate was one of the largest squares in the city. It had to be to accommodate all the wagons and carts coming in, and to give them space to turn so they can get to their particular roads. 4 roads led into it, not including the one through the gate, 2 running parallel to the walls, 2 coming in at angles on the far side from the gate. All but one of those roads had been blockaded with overturned wagons and wooden barricades. They weren't pretty. They looked like a cross between a furniture shop and a hedgehog. There were chairs and beds and big wooden planks nailed haphazardly to fill in the gaps, and some of them had sandbags piled up at the bottom or wedged in between the chairs. Spears bristled out of all of them. The golems could look down on all of them. The enemy were going to have to climb. We have recruits manning the spears on the other side of each barricade, said Joshua quietly, and every archer in the city is either on the wall or on top of the buildings circling this square. We have to hold them here or they'll get into the city and it'll be house to house. He didn't have to say any more. I could imagine what it would be like, huddling in your basement, hearing the doors being forced, and then men with swords bursting in, and we'll put the golems in the square then, I said briskly, rubbing my palms together. The fingers on my left hand had been slathered in honey, which is good for burns, and wrapped in gauze. They throbbed in time to my heartbeat. Joshua nodded. They'll be waiting when the Carracks break through the gate. Not if, I noticed. When. If they're able to drive them back through the gate, do so. I nodded. I had, in a large bowl, 7 lumps of half-cooked dough, which I had pulled from each golem. Argonel had found some paint, and each golem had a drippy armband in a different colour, which was also splashed on the bread, so theoretically I would be able to control each golem individually with the magic of sympathy. It had worked getting them to march. We hadn't had more than a few minutes to test it, though, and I had no idea how well it was going to work with complex orders. The golems were dumb, even for bread, and I was so tired. I'd lost more than half of the bad cookies by now. I'd managed to grab 10 and 20-minute catnaps while the golems cooked, but every time a bad cookie went, I jerked awake again. Nothing like that had happened with the other baked goods, probably because I always pulled the magic out of them before they got eaten or destroyed or whatever. It was a nasty feeling. Exhaustion was starting to creep around the edges of my vision like grey mould. When the golems were settled, the last road was barricaded up. The wagons that had brought us here were unloaded and turned on their sides. Soldiers dragged out big wooden barriers. I recognised barn doors from the paint and braced them between buildings. Argonel, I said as the barricade went up, leaving him on the other side with the dough and a dozen replacement barrels. It's been an honour, Wizard Mona, he said, smiling down at me. Don't worry. Thanks, Argonel, I said, for, all of it. He nodded. We didn't say anything more because I was pretty sure if I said too much more, I was going to start crying, and maybe he would have too. I don't know. Wooden planks filled up the space between us. How do we get out? I asked Joshua. He nodded to ladders laid against the wall. We'll pull them up once the fighting starts. Shall we go up now? Harold came up the ladder behind me, and Aunt Tabitha came up behind him. I could hear the archers shifting and talking quietly on the roof. Somebody told a joke. Somebody else laughed. One sharp bark. The view from the top of the wall was of darkness, broken by the red glow of Carrick's campfires. I could see shadows of men moving, but nothing more. The Duchess was waiting at the top of the wall. She was wearing armour. When she saw me, she smiled. Mona, my dear. Her smile faded. Can we not find armour for her? Mona's not trained to fight in armour, said Joshua. Even if she was, we don't have much for young girls. He nodded to an aide, a tall man standing just within earshot. Kryn, run over to the armoury, see what you can find for the wizard and her aunt. Aunt Tabitha laughed. I suspect you'd have an easier time feeing Mona. The Duchess reached out and took Tabitha's arm and said, Madam, we will not lose you or your niece, who have done so much for us, to a stray arrow or a misplaced bow. Aunt Tabitha, who had lost much of her fear of the monarchy in the last day or so, actually patted the Duchess's hand and said, Don't worry, Your Grace, it will take a great deal to get rid of me. Someone must make sure that you all wizards and warriors remember to eat. Another of the bad cookies winked out. I was down to 10. I wondered if they'd done anything beyond leaving me tired enough to curl up right here on the stone wall and take a nap. Where is Spindle? Is he out there in the dark? Did he make it back inside the walls? Did he do something stupid? My little gingerbread cookie was still out there somewhere too. I didn't know where. I didn't have anything to track him with, like the bad cookies, but I was sure I'd feel it if he vanished. Should the Duchess be up here? I asked Joshua in an undertone. I mean, if they get into the city. The Duchess had very, very sharp ears. She came and leaned on the battlements next to me. I could hide in the palace, she said. There are very thick doors. I could spend the next 2 days cowering in a dark room while my people die, waiting for the doors to finally be broken down and the Carricks to come for me. I have cowered enough these last few months. I find that I fear that dark room more than I fear dying out here, in the open air. What will happen if we lose? I asked. The Duchess sighed. If he has control over the Carricks, then Oberon will take me prisoner, and most likely have me executed immediately after a trial designed to convince the nobles that we are still under the rule of law, and they can continue pretty much as they always have. You, well, it is hard to say, my dear, but you have been a threat and a nuisance to him, and I suspect that he will have you executed if he can catch you. She tilted her head. If he does not have control over the Carricks, then we will mostly die once they break through our defences. I nodded. It was about what I had expected. Then my knees went weak and wobbly, and I could feel my stomach churning. Well, I didn't say anything about it. The Duchess had put on that royal mask again, being strong and competent and inspiring, and I really didn't want to whimper in front of her. Thank you, Jax. You'll have to go through me, growled Aunt Tabitha. And us as well, said Joshua dryly. I doubt that will be a problem once the city's breached. There's simply not enough of us. The runner arrived with his arms full of leather and chain. As Joshua had predicted, there was very little that fit me. I had to settle for a leather cap and a heavy vest, made out of leather with metal bits sewn to it that Joshua said was usually worn by the drummer boy. It actually wasn't too bad. It felt a bit like the apron I wore at work, just heavier, and at least my arms were still free. Aunt Tabitha, on the other hand, got a full suit of chainmail. A lot of guards are big. They generally aren't big in the same places Aunt Tabitha is big, but she made it work. It was frighteningly appropriate. If she hadn't been a baker, Aunt Tabitha would probably have been one of those northern warrior women with the big breastplates that sing opera and carry off the souls of the valiant dead. While they were outfitting her, I went back to staring out at the Carrick's camp. When is something going to happen? I asked Joshua. Things have been happening all night, he said. One of the big cook tents went up in flames a few hours ago. They had some trouble with the horses. I assume it's the men that Spindle told us about, harassing them. I grinned. Spindle's friends, or maybe a pack of really bad cookies. They should attack at dawn, said Joshua, as my grin faded, or as soon as it's light enough to see. The attack came 20 minutes after sunrise. Aunt Tabitha said it had been 20 minutes anyway. She's got a pretty good internal clock. Always knows when the muffins are ready to pull out of the oven. Didn't feel like 20 minutes. Felt like 20 years. The sky looked like a raw egg, runny with streaks of red in it. They're forming up, said Harold, standing with us on the battlements. Joshua had gone to address the archers off on the left side of the wall. I couldn't really tell what was going on, to be honest with you. Except that the milling Carracks were milling more or less in our direction and forming into a very, very large crowd, aiming our way. It looked more like the crowd you get when the circus comes to town than anything military. And then they started to move towards the wall. "Archers!" cried a voice, and "Archers! Archers! Archers!" ran along the top of the wall as the officers picked up the cry and passed it down. On either side of our little knot, men with bows stepped forwards and knocked arrows onto strings. "Hold!" cried the voice. "Hold! Hold! Hold!" The Carracks broke into a run. "Steady," murmured Harold to no one in particular. "Steady. Steady, wait until they're in range." It seemed to take forever. I wanted them to fire and get it over with, shoot the people coming at us waving swords and axes, and I didn't even know what that was. It looked like a bull with spikes on it. Who carries around a bull with spikes on it? But the archers held and held and held, and then fire! Arrows rained down with a hiss like butter on the griddle, magnified 100 times. It didn't do anything. Well, I'm sure it did something. I heard some Carracks scream and a few fell down, but if there were any gaps in the crowd, they filled in immediately, and that was extremely discouraging. There was another volley. The Carracks' army continued to run towards us. There were so many of them, the ones in back hadn't even left their camp yet. They could afford to throw waves at us, while the rest sat around the campfire and toasted marshmallows, and this struck me as just desperately unfair. They could at least pretend we were dangerous, out of common courtesy. "Slings!" shouted the voice down the wall. "Slings! Slings!" The archers stepped back and drew more arrows. 50 fighters, none of them guards. I saw women. I saw a few kids older than me, carrying leather slings, stepped forward, fitting jars full of angry Bob into their weapons, and began to twirl them above their heads. "This is it, Bob." I thought hard at my favourite sourdough. "This is your big moment. I hope you're good and mad." It was an awkward fit. Sling stones are usually a lot smaller than jars. A couple of them fell out and smashed on the wall, and a few more failed to get more than a few feet beyond the wall. But the majority sailed into the ranks of the Carracks with the crisp sounds of shattering glass. That they noticed. Part of it was the simple fact that if you get clocked over the head with a jar, you tend to pay attention. But Bob was angry, and he'd had all night to stew in his own juices, both literally and metaphorically. The Carracks who got hit by jars found themselves with a furious, slimy mass that burned like acid, and which was trying to crawl under their armour. There was a lot more yelling. Gaps opened up in the line as individual Carracks stopped running and started trying to yank their armour off to get at the bobs. Other men slowed down to see where their comrades were yelling and stripping off in the middle of a battlefield, and some of them got hit by stray bits of bob, which immediately tried to go up their noses. "Get 'em, Bob!" cheered Aunt Tabitha next to me. "Show those filthy mercenaries what for!" "Slings! Slings! Slings!" The second wave of bob hit the enemy. Given how much chaos he was causing, I was starting to wish I'd spent less time on golems and more on making wheelbarrows full of bob. I still had a jar with me and a half bucket or so back at the palace, so if we held them for a full day and they retreated at night, I might be able to whip up something else. The slingers stepped back, and the archers, who had picked up fresh quivers, stepped forwards. The gaps in the enemy line that Bob had opened got bigger as the archers fired, and the crowd that finally surged against the gate was ragged in places. I expected them to fill in, but they didn't. Some of the mercenaries that had gotten a faceful of Bob were down, and nobody wanted to get too close to them. Bob was fully capable of jumping if he was angry enough. He'd almost pounced on one of the guards moving barrels earlier. The downed mercenaries were twitching a bit, but that was all. I felt sick. On the one hand, I hated them for burning the fields, for attacking my city, for working for Oberon. But still, death by sourdough starter. And it's not a good way to go. You had to feel sorry for them, and I was the one who brought it about. If you just leave, I thought, if you just turn around and leave, none of this would have to happen. The ranks of Carracks opened. A man on a horse rode down the aisle they formed. Behind him were two more men, also on for horses, one carrying a white flag. "Now for the farce," muttered the Duchess. "I suppose it's too much to hope that they're surrendering," I said. "Far too much. I believe that's Oberon." It was. The former Inquisitor rode until he stood perhaps 20 feet from the wall and looked up. The horseman, who wasn't carrying a flag, rode even closer. "Some kind of herald," murmured Harold. "And definitely Oberon." "Shoot him," I hissed, practically hopping up and down. "We've got archers. Shoot him. Shoot him a lot." "He's under a white flag," said the Duchess wearily. "You don't shoot people with white flags." "But it's Oberon!" "Believe me, Mona, I am entirely sympathetic to your feelings, but we don't shoot people with white flags in hopes that someday, if we're under a white flag, they will return the favour. Rules of warfare." "His Lordship Oberon, Inquisitor of the city, would address the traitor Duchess," shouted the herald. His voice was loud and carried across the walls. Men along the wall booed. The Duchess rolled her eyes and stepped up to the battlement. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "If Oberon wants a traitor, he should look in the mirror. I am the Duchess, rightful ruler of this city." The men cheered. The herald's horse sidled and stamped its feet. "His Lordship makes you the following offer. That you now, at once, open the city, and lay down your arms. That all aggression against our Carracks allies ceases. That the Duchess be handed over—" "I could save you the trouble," called Joshua from further down the wall. "His Lordship can stuff it in his arse." "We will never surrender," shouted the Duchess. "We will never submit to the rule of a traitor backed by hired killers. We will fight for our city to the last man." Great waves of cheering broke over the walls. Men waved their swords and bows in the air. Under the chorus, the Duchess muttered, "At least not until sometime this afternoon, when it's that or have the city burned down around our ears." Aunt Tabitha snorted. The herald turned and rode away. "Thank you. Marriage was absolutely what I was going for. Thank you for picking up what I was putting down." Chapter Marriage. Chapter 33. The Duchess caught my eye, and her lips twisted in something that resembled a smile of sorts. "It wouldn't help if we surrendered, Mona. The Carracks would pillage the city anyway. Oberon may think he can keep them on a leash and use them as his army, but once they're inside the walls, they will tear the city apart looking for food and gold, and then they will squat in the ruins. And when the army gets back, they'll be the ones laying siege. The best we can do is reduce their numbers and make them pay for every inch of ground they take. She sighed. The Golden General will make a good ruler. Probably a better one than me. I only pray there will be enough left for him to rule. Oberon rode away down the aisle with the herald and flag bearer. The crowd of Carracks closed around him. I peered over the edge of the battlements. Now what do they do? None of the surrounding buildings were tall enough for them to reach the top of the wall, or anything like it. The city laws were very strict about that, and there wasn't much point in attacking a stone wall with a sword, although some of the Carracks were pounding on the wall with their sword hilts anyway. "Let's try to break down the gate," said Harold. "They're bringing up the battering ram now." He pointed to a thick line of men with shields over their heads to ward off arrows. They were carrying a very large log. The end of the log was a big ball of steel, moulded into the shape of a fist. "Oh, it's a knocker," said the Duchess. "Dear me, I knew they probably had one. I hoped I was wrong." I didn't ask why it was called a knocker. It was pretty obvious. The Carracks were going to knock on the gates, and then the Carracks were going to knock the gates down. "There's an iron portcullis, isn't there? Shouldn't that hold up?" Harold shook his head. "Oh, it might, for a bit. The mortar won't. Something like that could knock the portcullis right out of the wall holding it, or bend it so far out of shape you can wiggle under." Thunk! The knocker hit the gate. "Doesn't look like it did much." I craned my neck, trying to see. Aunt Tabitha grabbed my collar and hauled me back. "Just wait," said Harold. Thunk! A faint shudder went through the stones of the wall. Thunk! 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 "I really don't like this," I said to no one in particular as dust sifted down from the top of the wall. Felt like the knocker was going to bring down the whole thing, not just the gate. "Me neither," said the Duchess. Thunk! Thunk! Crunch! That was a bad sound. "Oh yes, scrunch!" "Almost through the portcullis," said Harold. I had expected the gates to last a lot longer, until mid-morning at least. We had to hold them off for 2 days minimum if the army was going to show up and save us all, and in half an hour they were most of the way to breaching the walls. This was bad. "At least they're not coming over the walls," said Harold, answering my thoughts. "Knockers are heavy equipment to lug around. They can't afford to drag any more siege equipment with them." The archers kept firing. The slingers flung stones. The air hissed with arrows, punctuated by the crunching thud, as the knocker chewed relentlessly at our gates. Crunch. Crunch. Every time one of the men holding the knocker fell, another ran up under a shield to take his place. I wished I had an ocean of bob to drop on their heads. Joshua ran up, jogging with his head down to stay below the knocked bowstrings of the archers. "Mona, they're almost through. It'll be time for the golems in a minute." I moved to the other side of the wall, looking down into the courtyard. My ears buzzed, and my feet seemed a very long way away. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, of course." I picked up the bowl of dough. Crunch. Crunch. Crack. The wood splintered. The next blow went right through the gates, and I looked down and saw the metal fist of the knocker emerge into the square. Joshua had suggested the arrangement of golems, 3 in front of a semicircle around the gate, 4 in the back in a larger circle. I grabbed the 3 balls of dough in front, red, blue, and black, and thought, "Forward! Stop those men!" The golems stepped forwards. Their barrel feet clopped loudly on the stones, audible even over the shouts of the Carracks. The enemy poured through, past the men holding the knocker, into the square, and stopped. Well, I mean, to be fair, they'd probably never seen a 12-foot-tall man made out of bread before. Let alone 7 of them. The golem with the red band on its arm lifted its club and smacked the warrior in the lead on the head. He fell down. The mercenaries looked at their leader and at the golem. They did not look up at the wall, thankfully, where they might have seen a 14-year-old girl scowling ferociously into a bowl full of bread dough. Now, to give credit where credit is due, the Carracks did not stay surprised for very long. There was a reason they were the most feared mercenaries in the land. They might not use magic themselves, but they understood when they were facing it, and neither were they afraid of it. They didn't back down. Neither did the golems. Red, black, and blue swung their clubs, knocking warriors into each other, into the walls, sending them rolling across the cobblestones. I was absurdly proud. There was weight behind those blows. I'd always been impressed at the strength of the gingerbread men in relation to their size, and my golems were just as strong. They might only be made of bread, but the way they moved, they might as well have been made of stone. The first group of Carracks through the door didn't even make it past the first 3 golems. The second, rather than engage, tried to charge, and found themselves running into the arms of green, white, orange, and purple. Well, I say arms. More like the knees. The third group of Carracks paused at the gate and seemed to be having a heated discussion with one another about the best way to proceed. The archers picked off a few more. I grabbed the good ball of dough belonging to Red. Down in the square, Red dropped its club, took 2 heavy strides forward, and grabbed the end of the knocker. It couldn't quite pick the battering ram up. Even magic bread has limits, but it hauled the knocker into the square. The men on the other end yelled and squawked and hung on until they realised they were being dragged inside the walls. Having seen what had just happened to the other Carracks, they prudently let go. Red dragged the knocker inside and dumped it against one of the walls. "You know, I've always rather wanted one of those," said the Duchess. Red picked up its club in time to meet the next wave of Carracks. This time, they got smart. They went for the golem's knees just above the barrel. I imagine that they were thinking, and probably rightly, that if they could hack through the bread there, the golems would be down and helpless. It was actually a really good plan. However, as you probably know, if you've ever tried to cut a loaf of bread, you can't just stab it with a sharp knife. Stabbing it doesn't do a lot, except get your knife stuck in the crust. You need a serrated blade, and you need to saw back and forth with it to slice the loaf off. It takes a little time. I sank my fingers into the dough. Generally, when I had the cookies do this, it was a dance number to amuse the customers, but... "Are they doing the can-can?" said Harold in disbelief. "Battle can-can," said the Duchess wisely. "Very old tactical manoeuvre, used to defeat the waltzing berserkers of West Quillmark, as I recall." "You just made that up." "Well, obviously. The golems could do a pretty good high kick. It got their legs out of range of the Carracks and generally took the swords along with them. Red had a sword stuck right through its left knee, and Blue had 2 swords in the right, and Black took the prize with 3 swords and 1 axe buried partway up the thigh. Now, since Bread doesn't really care if there's a knife stuck in it, this did not slow them down at all. The kicks also meant that the owners of these weapons had all just taken a high-velocity barrel to the torso and were mostly out of commission. There was a brief pause while the Carracks tried to figure out what to do next while staying out of the way of our archers. A semicircle of clear ground formed in front of the gate, and I took the opportunity to slump against the battlements. The magical weight that I seemed to be carrying around got a lot heavier when the fighting started. Even the loss of a couple more bad cookies sometime during the battle couldn't balance it out. I felt like I was trying to jog uphill, carrying a backpack full of rocks. Aunt Tabitha felt my forehead. "You're flushed," she said accusingly. "And you feel hot." "Aunt Tabitha, we're having a war. I don't think I can go and have a quick lie down." She frowned. "Don't you just hurt yourself, Gil. You're the only niece I've got. And the only wizard the city's got too. The only wizard aside from Knacker and Molly. Wish she was here. Didn't know if it would help, but it would be nice not to be the only one. And more than anything, honestly, I wish Spindle was here. I hope he's okay." A group of Carracks carrying bows came through the crowd of their fellows, which was now largely standing around, holding shields over their heads. "This is where you see the advantages of military discipline," said Harold. "Our troops will keep attacking until they brought them down through sheer force of numbers. None of the mercenaries won't be the first one through the gate." Their archers reached the front lines, knelt, and began shooting at the columns. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Stab a bunch of toothpicks into a loaf of bread and you've got, I don't know, an appetizer or something. Not a dead golem, anyhow. Clearly the Carracks still had no idea what they were dealing with. Our archers had to lean over the edge of the battlements to shoot, But there was a minute where the Carracks shot at the golems and our men shot at the Carracks, and by the end of it, there were a lot few Carracks archers, and red and black looked like hedgehogs. Blue, who had been mostly shielded by the broken gate, just stood there until a foolish Carracks came along around the edge of the wall and got a face full of fence post. The archers retreated. There was more hurried discussion. This time, when they attacked, they sent twice as many men in. The 4 golems in back had to do the can-can as well, but after about 10 frantic minutes, I had a pounding headache, and the Carracks hadn't gotten anywhere. 2 or 3 had managed to get past the golems to the barricades, where they were promptly picked off by archers on the roof. I was feeling a grim sort of hope, even looking over the other side of the wall and seeing just how many Carracks remained couldn't quite squelch it. Blue's barrel is getting pretty beaten up, said the Duchess. I nodded. Arganel is supposed to have some spares at the wagons. I had Blue fall back. White took his place, walked Blue over to the barricade on the palace road. It was the lowest of the bunch, and Blue was able to step over it somewhat awkwardly. Seeing the number of golems diminish, the Carracks attacked again. They were beaten back, but more made it through to the barricades, and now Black was limping. A suicidally brave Carracks with an axe had actually climbed onto Black's leg and gotten a couple of solid hacks into his knee before the golem managed to detach him. Can you heal them? Asked the Duchess. I chewed on my lower lip. He needs patching. It's not a wound, exactly. His leg just won't hold him up all the way. I've got dough. I can fix it. But I need to be down there to make it work. Blue stepped back over the barricade and back into the fray. The Carracks retreated again. Harold and the Duchess held a brief conference. Quick, said the Duchess, before there's another wave. Down onto that roof there and around the back. Harold knows the way. Hurry. I followed Harold. Aunt Tabitha came down the ladder after us. Took us down to a roof, and there we went down the fire escape and into the streets. And it was much scarier on the ground. You couldn't see what was going on. You could just hear the dull roar of the army outside the walls. I fretted. If the Carracks attacked before we got back, the golems could fight on their own. But if anything unexpected happened, well, Bread's not good at independent thought. If the Carracks broke through the barricades while we were on the ground, we were going to get overrun by angry people with swords, and that would be exciting for about 30 seconds, but not in a good way. It seemed to take a lot longer to go around the square than it had to cross it, even though we ran. The cobblestones were the rounded ones that looked like sweet buns. We had to be careful because they always get a bit slippery. When we finally rounded the corner and saw Arganel and the barrels, I let out a cheer. Arganel whipped round and very nearly cracked Harold over the head with his smith's hammer before he realised who it was. Oh, it's you, Mona. The golems are doing much better than we hoped, he grinned. But what are you doing down from the walls? It's Black, I said, grabbing the black-marked doughball and ordering him to come back over the barricades. He's going to lose a leg in a minute if I don't fix him. Arganel nodded. We all scattered to the walls as Black's foot came down. He wavered for a moment. That knee was definitely going, and then caught his balance. I grabbed a glob of dough out of one of the barrels and crammed it into the wedge the axe had cut in Black's leg. I had to climb up the barrel to do it. The Carracks axemen had been a lot taller than I was. Aunt Tabitha came up behind me and handed me several more handfuls until we managed to fill the gap. All right, I said, let's see if this works. I put my hands on either side of the raw dough and thought hard about how I wanted to fuse with the bread around it, seal up the gap, become part of the golem. It was hard. The magic of sympathy was working against me here. This dough wasn't part of the same batch and hadn't been baked together. I was already feeling magically exhausted, and for a minute or two, nothing seemed to be happening. Come on, come on! You can do it! There was a yell from the barricade. I jerked my head up and saw that the Carracks had taken advantage of the gap in the line to charge again, and this time they kept coming and climbing. Men on the barricades were stabbing with spears to try and fend them off, but as I watched, 2 helmeted heads popped up over the top. Arganel and Harold rushed to help. The first 2 Carracks were knocked back down, but now 3 more were coming up on the sides, and one was, oh, sweet lady of sorrowful angels, one was actually over the barricade and coming this way. Aunt Tabitha yanked a hammer from the fingers of an apprentice who had turned sort of green and charged the enemy, whooping. I grabbed the dough in front of me and thought, you play nice and be a patch on this golem right bloody now! Black grunted. The patch of dough oozed into position and hardened into a flowering crust. I scrambled down just in time to see Aunt Tabitha reach the Carracks. The enemy warrior clearly had no idea what to make of the berserk woman charging at him with her house dress flapping madly over her jingling armour. He gaped at her. Aunt Tabitha whacked him with the hammer so hard that his helmet got knocked halfway around his head, and he fell down. She kicked him a few times. Aunt Tabitha had very definite opinions about people who tried to invade her city. Standing up made my head spin, and for a moment I very nearly fell down myself. The magic was draining out of me in a steady drip, drip, like an untreated wound. But if Aunt Tabitha was fighting the Carracks, I didn't have time to faint. I bit my lip and thought, you stop that. The world stabilised and stopped going fuzzy and grey around the edges. I exhaled. Time to get Black back into the fray. I turned to pat him on the leg. Back you go. There's a good Gollum. And that pat is what saved my life. The spring green man's knife hit my shoulder at an angle instead of the back of my neck, and the point skittered off the armoured jerkin. I yelped. I wanted to scream, but a thin little yell was all that came out. Harold and Argonel and Aunt Tabitha were busy on the barricades, and there were Carracks coming up over the sides, and Black was knocking them down, but some had still gotten over, and the spring green man was lifting his knife for another blow, and that familiar, heavy, sweet smell was all around us, and he bared his teeth at me like an animal. "Third time pays for all, little bread wizard," he hissed, and I knew that my luck had finally run out.
And you're all welcome I didn't pick that chapter to end the night.
Tempted beyond words to just deadpan, and we're leaving it there for tonight.
I almost did. I almost made that the ending.
Yeah, these are chunky chapters too.
Yeah, they are.
There was something, chapter 34. There was something stuck in his teeth. Here I was, about to die, stabbed to death by a deranged wizard, and that was what I noticed. There was something green stuck in his teeth. Fortunately, the rest of my body knew what was important. My knees decided to throw me sideways, without bothering to consult my brain. I caught myself, took off at a run, sliding on the cobblestones. If I could get back to the wall, surely Joshua and the Duchess could defend me, or we could knock him off the ladder or something. He couldn't climb the ladder with a knife in his hand, right? Right away I realised that I was in trouble. The weight of magic was still with me, even if I was running for my life. It was like trying to run with concrete blocks strapped to my ankles. I dropped the rest of the bad cookies ruthlessly and got a little back, but I didn't dare cut off the golems. The golems were the only thing standing between the Carracks and the city. Oh God, I'm going to die. I could hear Elgar's footsteps pounding behind me. Where were the archers? Couldn't one look this way and see what was happening and kill him? And the jerkin, which had saved my life before, might kill me now. It was so hot and so heavy I couldn't seem to breathe right with it pressing down on me, and that horrible spicy smell was filling my lungs and making it even harder to breathe. Is this the street that goes back to the wall? I think this is the street. There's the building at the end, the red brick one with the fires. The spring green man grabbed my shoulder, wrenched me around, and slammed me into the wall of the nearby alley. I guess it doesn't matter now. Elgar grabbed my wrists in one hand, and you know what? It is completely and utterly unfair that when you are a 14-year-old girl, even if you have amazing forearms, your wrists are still small enough for somebody else to hold with one hand. I flailed, and I think he was surprised at how strong I was, but I didn't go anywhere except back against the brick wall. Hard. Blood thudded in my ears. He lifted the knife. The blade gleamed. The sun was shining down into the alley, and that meant it was nearly noon. We'd held out until almost noon. That was good. Right? "You're not getting away from me again," Elgar said. "I wasn't leaving this city until I saw you dead." I could hardly hear him over the pounding of blood in my ears and the shouting of the battle a few yards away, but I got the gist. "I would have thought you'd be with Oberon," I panted. Elgar spat. "That idiot. Once he took the city, I was going to kill him anyway. A wizard emperor. Just think of it." I guess really bad people all think they're using each other and being really clever about it, and they all want to be in charge. You never see them stabbing each other over who gets to be the baker. And because I was really going to die right this minute, and it didn't much matter anymore, I said, "You've got something stuck in your teeth." He blinked. I guess this is not the sort of thing that people say when you are about to stab them. What? In your teeth. Sort of green. What is wrong with you? This was an excellent question, and I was sort of wondering that myself. So anyway, the spring green man lifted the knife higher, and then something happened very fast, and something made of rag and bone sang past my face, and Elgar was flung halfway down the alley, because Nag had just kicked his head in. Apparently that thudding noise had not been my heart pounding in my ears after all. "Oh yeah!" yelled Spindle, scrambling down from behind Molly as Nag's hooves landed back on the cobbles. "That's for Tibby, you green bastard! I hope you rot!" Nag, being dead himself, did not object to Spindle jumping off his back, nor did he seem to notice when I threw my arms around one of his back legs and hugged him very much. Knackering Molly snorted. "Seems like I keep finding you in trouble, Baker girl." "I'm alive," I moaned into Nag's hip bone. "Molly, Nag, Spindle." Spindle looked up from Elgar's limp body. "What?" "You're alive! I'm alive!" I started giggling hysterically because otherwise I was going to sit down and sob right there. "We're all alive, except Nag. I mean, other than him. We're all... Oh!" My stomach clenched. I went down to my knees and last night's dinner came all the way back up. "Ugh!" said Spindle, who had left off kicking the late Elgar and was now going through his pockets. "Oh, it happens," said Knackering Molly firmly. "Takes everybody differently, so don't you go making fun, Spindle." Spindle rolled his eyes. I wiped up my mouth and thought somebody pulled my hair back. When I looked, it was my little gingerbread man. He waved. "You can't really hug a cookie." I did try. I leaned my cheek against him. "What happened to you?" I asked. "I've been worried sick. I thought the Carracks got you." Spindle rolled his eyes. "They may be good with their swords and all, but they ain't got the least idea how to catch a sneak. I got in and got out. Last I saw, those nasty little gingerbread mites were cutting up the ropes on one of the supply tents. Nah, problem is getting back in." He spat on the cobbles. "That stupid thief Slug caught me and started telling people I was a spy, not to let me back in the city. Thought it was funny as anything, the great lump. Lucky for him, I came along and convinced Slug otherwise," said Molly mildly. She slapped at Nag's shoulder. "Figured I should bring him up here on my own, though. City's lost its mind now there's a battle on." I exhaled. My stomach stayed quiet. My cookie was fine. The Spindle was fine. Everybody was... A golem winked out like a dying star. "The golems!" I shot upright. There wasn't anything left in my stomach anyway, but even if there had been, I didn't have time to be sick. I had to get back to the golems, now. I ran back down the alley. Spindle cursed and ran after me. I could hear Nag's irregular hoofbeats following. I shot out the mouth of the alley and practically into the arms of Aunt Tabitha. "Mona, we thought something did happen. Elgar tried to stab me, and Nag saved me. It doesn't matter now. We've lost a golem." "We've lost two," said Aunt Tabitha grimly, and before she'd finished speaking, I felt another one fail. They figured out how to knock them over. Then they can't get back up again. We rushed back to the barricade. I grabbed for my bowl of dough, but it was too late. A third golem teetered and fell like a great tree, and Carracks jumped on it, hacking and sawing with swords like blind men trying to slice bread. There were mercenaries coming up the barricades now. Ours was the lowest and least built up of the walls, and they clearly knew it. If they could get over our barricade and tear it down, they wouldn't have to scale any of the others. They'd have a straight shot into the city and could come up behind the defenders on the other streets. I ordered the 4 remaining golems into a wedge defending our barricade. That would buy us time. But time for what? There was still dough left. When they unloaded the wagon, they'd left a half-dozen barrels in neat lines on either side of the street, and that ridiculous coffin from the Church of Sorrowful Angels was laid on top of them. Argonel and Harold stepped back from the barricades. The golems were keeping enough of the Carracks back that the regular guards could handle it. Harold said, "Mona, we have to get you away from here. They're going to break through." "No," I said. My plan was crystallizing inside my head. It was a terrible plan. But what else was new? "No, help me empty these barrels. I need as much dough as we can get." But Argonel shoved him aside, grabbed a barrel, and knocked it over. Dough glorped stickily into the street. It wasn't right for bread dough. There was more sugar, and dark brown lumps floated on the surface. "Chocolate chip cookie dough?" asked Aunt Tabitha blankly. Who went to all the trouble of making chocolate chip cookie dough? The name on the side of the barrel was one of the most exclusive pastry shops in the city. We dumped out 4 more barrels, and 3 of them were chocolate chip. Well, okay, chocolate chip cookie dough, I can do this. Shouldn't be any more different than bread, just raw. Another golem fell. The roar of triumph from the Carracks crashed over the barrier. I shoved both my hands up to the elbow in the pile of dough and tried to think. Aunt Tabitha and Arganel continued dumping dough around me, made a pile on the street as high as my knees. Not the gingerbread man. Standing upright wasn't going to be much help, and anyway, I would have needed a rolling pin as big as a tree trunk. No, something lower, something legless and oozy. Wake up, I told the dough frantically. Wake up. Get up. We need you. The dough didn't want to. Didn't like the shape I had chosen. It wasn't a real shape. It wasn't baked yet. It was cold and stiff from sitting overnight in the barrels, and it was feeling obstinate. We don't have time for this. Get up! There were too many different doughs all muddled together. They weren't combining. I jumped onto the pile and began stomping around, kneading with my boots. You are one. You are the same. Get up! My gingerbread cookie yanked on my ear. I looked up and saw one of our guards, nobody I knew but one of ours, fall from the top of the barricade. A Carrack stood there with a bloody sword in his hand, and there was no one stopping him. Arganel and Harold leapt up and placed themselves between me and the barricade, but we were out of time. Get up! I screamed at the dough. I had so little magic left I couldn't see straight, but I had rage and horror to spare, and I poured it all down my hands into the pile of dough. Get up, you stupid thing, and fight! It got up. It was... Well, I suppose it was a slug, as much as anything. I tried to think of it as a slug, because the magic works so much better when things are shaped like animals or people, so a slug. A slug with fists. It was only about waist high, but the front pulled itself off the ground and 2 flailing arms came out, and it slithered across the cobbles towards the barricade and 2 startled Carracks standing on top of it. Gods and devils, said nagging Molly. What have you done, Baker Girl? Best I could, I said, and tried to stand up. My knees buckled. I realized with mild surprise that the energy that normally went into making my legs work was now going into animating the chocolate chip slug monster. The slug reached the barricade. Our guards, sensibly, scrambled out of its way. It slimed over the top easily. The dough was sticky enough that it didn't have any problems with the footing, and anyway, it didn't, have feet. One of the Carracks hacked at it with its sword. The sword sank into the dough with a gloop and did not come back out again. The slug lashed out with a tentacle and knocked them both backwards into the square. It wasn't very fast, but it was scary. Still, what could it do against thousands of Carracks? Aunt Tabitha grabbed my shoulder. I swayed under her hand. I'd given too much magic to the dough bird, and it had exploded. If I gave the slug too much magic, it would explode. If I could just get it out into the main body of Carracks, I could pour magic into it, and it would become a giant mobile bomb. I knew, even as I hung limply in Aunt Tabitha's grasp, that this was the end. I'd pushed the magic much further than I thought I could, but it was done. If I tried to pour that much of myself into the slug, it would be with the energy that kept me alive. I could send it oozing across the battlefield and blow it up, but that would be the last thing I did. I thought it likely the golems would keep going for a little while after I died. A few minutes, maybe an hour. Probably not long enough to save the city, but maybe long enough to make a difference. Maybe Aunt Tabitha and Spindle and Arganel would have time to get away. Get me over to the dough, I choked out. Aunt Tabitha shook her head. You're done. I've seen corpses that look better than you right now, love. I wanted to laugh. In another minute. That would not be a problem. I have to, I said, forcing the words out. There's no other wizards left. I tried to crawl forwards. I needed that dough for the magic of sympathy. Why were the barrels so far away? If I couldn't get to the barrels, I couldn't blow up the slug. There was a long pause while Aunt Tabitha wrung her hands. And then Nackry Molly slid down off her horse and said, There's one more wizard. And we'll leave it there. Feels.
Yeah.
Content warning feels.
Yeah.
Hi, Ursula. Welcome to the show. So, how does it feel to destroy readers emotionally? Is it fun? Is it nice?
So join us next week for the final installment, everyone.
I think we can.
Yeah.
And I think we just did.
I think that's what we're unfortunately having to do to people tonight. So our choices were literally, do we stop with Mona almost being stabbed by the Spring Green Man, or do we stop with Knackering Maul stepping up to the plate?
I mean, this is full-on Star Trek 2. This is, sorry, Doctor, I have no time to discuss this logically. Just with a skeletal horse, you know?
Yeah, so...
This seemed like the best way.
Should we give everybody in the chat a few moments to kind of process their feelings, or should we... Why don't you take another sip of tea
See, the thing I really love about this is it's a brilliant set of plans, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, this is really... To put my kind of literary analysis hat on, this is really kind of the emotional crux of the book, that Mona has been under so much pressure and in such a horrible, horrible state for so long that this is really the only logical outcome. That she thinks, oh, okay, well, obviously I have to die to solve all of this. And that's when you flip and the B-plot becomes the A-plot, and people like me write 50,000 word monographs about this stuff.
I process my feelings. The feelings are rage and sadness. Thank you, Eldritch. Yes. Alright, I think it might be time for something a little lighter.
So very, very much later. So.
Buttons. Button's not working?
No. Just.
There we go.
Now. It's time for shenanigans. I think we all need some shenanigans. As Opals has just pointed out, she's 14!
Right. So, start with that one.
Earlier today, as...
What's it up to?
It is currently on 356 likes and 78 retweets.
You might want to refresh that, actually. I think it's probably better than that. Yeah.
Oh my god. So, you saw this ridiculous nonsense earlier about Kim Kardashian taking, Golda Cat and the rest of her inner circle to really nothing. Okay.
That one pays for itself.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. To a private island to pretend like everything's normal for a little while. Now, I kind of had two responses to this. The first is, wow, literally no one has read Mask of the Red Death these days, have they?
Yeah, I know.
And the second was when Marguerite said, honey, could I borrow your Twitter account for a moment? To say yes. So the art for this is from eggnotart@tumblr.com. The quote from the Kardashians is, after 2 weeks of multiple health screens and asking, and I'll do it in Peter's voice. After 2 weeks of multiple health screens and asking everyone to quarantine, I surprised my closest inner circle with a trip to a private island where we could pretend things were normal just for a brief moment in time. And as several people have pointed out, that private island, of course, turned into lots of private islands where they were each left individually.
Or the one that Tundra went to.
And just forgotten about. Lots of islands in the Irish Sea count as private. Some of them even have buildings on them. So we have that for you. And we also have... this is going to be a double header, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to come over and...
Okay, bring your chair.
Scoot over. Because I'll have to tag in for part of this. I can see. It's fine. Hello, everybody. How are you? Hi. Okay. Which parts do you want me to read?
Do you want to do the Sarah Jasper stuff?
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, let me move the microphone a little bit. There we go. I'm like, I can't see. All right. You have to read the summary.
Okay.
No, don't read the summary because it's like the first email. Scroll down. So we'll just start with...
We're not doing the title.
Yeah, do the title. All right, go.
Eyes on the future, how Jonathan Sims approached his new manager with an open mind, took on board valuable feedback about his performance, and wholeheartedly embraced his professional development goals.
Yeah, this is not going to go well, is it?
By Shiny Opals. Hi, Shiny. Thank you for this.
This will be fun. Okay, scroll down. Okay, I'll do the HR parts, right?
Yeah.
Okay. From Sarah Jasper to Peter Lucas, Group Department Heads. Date 26 March 2018. Subject, Annual Performance Reviews. There are attachments. Hi, everyone. As you're probably aware, it's time for annual performance reviews. Please get these done, then fill in the attached objectives template for each of your direct reports and return it to me before the end of April. In line with our goal to reduce unnecessary face-to-face meetings, these reviews should now be conducted virtually where possible via the Institute Instant Messenger or email. I've attached some guidance on the best way to help your subordinates open up via text. If you're not sure how to run your reviews, a good structure to follow is 1. Spend time building your relationship. Ask how they are, what their weekend plans are, what they're doing on their holidays, etc. If you've got hobbies or interests in common, talk about those. Don't underestimate how important these little conversations can be in building trust. 2. Find out what they think are the good bits. Ask what they've particularly enjoyed about working at the Institute over the last 6 to 12 months. Is there anything they're particularly proud of or did well at? If you agree with their assessment, add your own positive feedback here. 3. Now delve into the trickier areas, still focusing on their thoughts. What have they enjoyed less? Where have they struggled? Where do they think they could have done better? Or where did they feel they needed more support? If you agree with their assessment, start working out how you can solve these issues together. 4. Further feedback from you. If there's anything you know is a problem that they haven't themselves identified, you now need to bring it up. There's no shying away from these difficult conversations, all. You'll be doing your people a disservice. 5. Write objectives. Use the discussions you've had to write 3 to 4 key development objectives for the next 12 months. These should be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-limited. And you ideally want your reports to take the lead in coming up with their own goals, as that'll inspire them to work towards them. Is that 6? 6. Finally, ask if they have any feedback for you. Feedback should not just flow downwards. Sometimes the people you manage can have incredibly useful insight into what you can do better as a leader. Do get in touch if you've got any questions. Kind regards, Sarah Jasper, Head of HR. Content warning, middle management voice. Oh, here's another one. From Sarah Jasper to Peter Lucas, dated 12th June 2018. Subject, annual reviews. Hi, Peter. My apologies for banging this drum again. It's possible you've missed the other reminders I've sent you. As the line manager for the department heads, I'm afraid it's really important you get annual reviews/objectives done for them all. If we don't have objectives in for all of our staff, we risk losing our ISO accreditation. This will almost certainly lead to some donors pulling out and mean we need to ask certain other donors for increased support.
Oh, she's good.
HR can help you make these happen. Just let me know what you need. Thanks, Sarah Jasper, Head of HR.
From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, your annual review. Hello, Jonathan. I trust this email finds you well. As you are no doubt aware, one of the most vital aspects of people management is ensuring one makes the time for one's line reports via an annual review. I understand you've been extremely busy, but I can't delay this any longer. It is important we understand your performance over the last year and your goals and objectives for the coming one. I wouldn't want you to feel unsupported by Institute management. In accordance with Institute policy reducing unnecessary face-to-face meetings, we will be conducting this via email. There is no need for you to leave your office at any point. Perhaps we can start with 1. Spend time building your relationship. Ask how they are, what their weekend plans are, what they're doing on their holidays. If you've got hobbies or interests in common, talk about those. Don't underestimate how important these little conversations can be in building trust. Kind regards, Peter Lucas, head of the Magnus Institute. Magnus Institute Instant Messenger, Jonathan Sims. Conversation history with Alice Tonner. Daisy, how many bottles of whiskey have you left in your desk drawers? 2.5. Why? Read the email I just forwarded you. Fucking hell.
Yeah, exactly.
I rescind everything I ever said about your management skills, and I'll bring those to your office once I put in an order for another couple of crates. Thanks. Wait, hold on. What have you been saying about my management skills? I'll do it again. Wait, hold on. What have you been saying about my management skills? Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy.
I'll read those bits going forward.
Okay. From Jonathan Sims to Peter Lucas. Subject, your annual review. Hi, Peter. Thank you for your email. I am naturally extremely pleased to be working with you as my manager and excited to take this time to think about my objectives. Being dead for 6 months this past year has helped me reassess my priorities, and my ongoing career development is certainly of paramount importance. To answer your specific queries, 1. Very well, thank you. 2. Working. 3. Working. 4. I don't have any hobbies. John. From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, your annual review. Hello, Jonathan. While I am delighted to hear about your dedication to your work, there is a danger that overdoing it might cause you to become burned out. Perhaps you should consider picking up some activities outside of work. I've always found listening to the shipping forecast to be extremely enjoyable. To continue your review, 1. Find out what they think are the good... I love that the number...
He's just copied
and pasted it.
He's just copied and pasted it.
Find out what they think are the good bits. Ask what they've particularly enjoyed about working at the Institute over the last 6 to 12 months. Is there anything they're particularly proud of or did well at? If you agree with their assessment, add your own positive feedback here. Kind regards, Peter. Magnus Institute Instant Messenger, Jonathan Sims, Conversation History with Alice Tonner. I forwarded another email, Daisy. He's really doing this. Christ, I'm getting Basira. This is way over my pay grade.
Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy.
From Jonathan Sims to Peter Lucas. Subject, your annual review. Hi, Peter. Thank you for your advice. Perhaps I'll get a cat. Over the past 6 to 12 months, I have particularly enjoyed the Institute's generous sick leave policy. I am most proud of assisting preventing the end of the world and supporting my assistants with our plan to get Elias arrested. John. From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, your annual review.
What number, Riri? I'll have water too. There we go. I can barely see the chat from here, so.
Hello, Jonathan. What a lovely idea. The tundra had a ship's cat for a number of years. They're very independent animals, perfectly suited to a life of solitude. You must be commended indeed for preventing the unknowing, and for ensuring that the position of head of the Magnus Institute is not filled by someone so unsuited and so dangerous. For the well-being of the employees here. It's a very important role to hold, one which Elias was clearly misusing, and I can only thank you for your assistance in this matter. Not to blow my own trumpet, as the modern idiom goes, but I think you'll find me a much more supportive manager. On to the next topic for your review. 1. Now delve into the trickier areas, still focusing on their thoughts. What have they enjoyed less? Where have they struggled? Where do they think they could have done better, or where did they feel they needed more support? If you agree with their assessment, start working out how you can solve these issues together. Kind regards, Peter. Magnus Institute Instant Messenger, Jonathan Sims. Conversation history with Alice Tonner.
I know.
I'm not going to make it through this one, you know that, right?
I know, just try.
He's trying to ruin cats for me now, Daisy. Who let a man like that have a cat? How dare they? How dare he? Cats don't even like solitude and loneliness. People just don't know how to read their body language. They think cats are like dogs, when actually cats are extremely affectionate and loving if you know what to look for, which some people clearly don't.
Can I read this line?
Yeah.
Wait, that's what you took from that email? Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy.
From Jonathan Sims to Peter Lucas. Subject, your annual review. Hi, Peter. I think I can safely say I've enjoyed every moment of the last year of my employment here at an exactly equal level. John. From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, the world will be yours. Attachments, sexyspiders.exe. Choose life. Choose love. Choose the sexiest spiders you know. Click to end it. From Jonathan Sims to Facilities, Robin Putrell, Michelle Langton, CC, Alice Tonner, Basira Hussain, Melanie King. Urgent Priority 0, resolve virus on Peter Lucas's computer and deep clean my office. Facilities team, my office requires a visit from pest control and then a deep clean. The door is currently locked, all cracks are sealed by whatever we could find, cloth, blue tack, statements. Whilst we did spray a significant amount of anti-insect spray on our way out, to the extent that I strongly recommend respirators, I cannot guarantee that all the spiders are dead. Do not open my office door unless you have taken appropriate precautions. Michelle, Robin, Peter's computer has a virus, and I recommend IT investigate as an urgent priority. For the sake of my reputation, I would like to clarify that I did not click any links, nor open any suspicious attachments. I did, however, open an email from him with a strange subject line, at which point spiders began to emerge from my USB ports. I believe these events are connected. In addition, I think you'll need another new equipment request form. Laptop, same specs as the old one, unless you can improve the antivirus to prevent a literal infestation of spiders. An email filter to block incoming mail from Peter Lucas would also be very much appreciated. Equipment for me. Reason for requirement, I threw the old one at the opposing wall of my office with some force as soon as spiders started to emerge from the USB ports. Authorized by me. I would like to request that the cost for both the extermination, deep cleaning, and new laptop is not taken from the Archives Department budget, since absolutely none of this was my fault. Please keep Daisy, Basira, Melanie in the CC, as they will let me know once it's safe to come up from the tunnels and back to my office.
I'll read the next one. Oh, God. From Michelle Langton to Jonathan Sims, CC Robin Putrell. Subject, virus / new laptop. Hey, Simsy, looks like you had a rough night. We'll wait on the deep cleaning before delivering you a new laptop if it's all the same to you. Thanks for letting us know so promptly about the virus situation. We've taken possession of Peter Lucas's computer and dealt with the issue with the source. You've saved the Institute from the spiders. You might be interested to know that Peter acquired the virus from searching for Hello Google.
Would you let me to?
Oh, okay.
No. Hello, Google. I believe the internet is used far too often for multiple people to communicate with each other. Can you give me some advice on how to destroy it and prevent this happening?
This is technically in contravention of our IT policy, Chapter 5, subsection C, paragraph 14, but try telling the big man that. Anyway, when I saw the virus name, I was slightly afraid he'd be searching for something risque about spiders, so the above is a relief, really. I shouldn't actually be telling you this, so keep it under your hat. I guess people must tell you all sorts as part of your job, though, so call it a statement of Michelle Langton regarding her idiot boss. Lol. Let us know about your office. Michelle Langton, head of IT department.
Magnus Institute Instant Messenger. Jonathan Sims. Conversation history with Alice Tonner. Hi, John. How are the tunnels? Your voice come back. Yeah, exterminators are here, by the way. I have supernatural healing. Yes, my voice has come back. That was a lot of yelling you did, is all I'm saying. You also yelled, as did Basira and Melanie. Go ask them about their voices. I have, and we made a pot of lemon ginger tea with a lot of honey. Would you like a cup? Oh. Right. Thanks. Just as long as you don't get all mopey, because it's not like you know who makes tea. I do not mope. Sure you don't. Down in a sec, anyway.
Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy. Attribution, no commercial, non-derivatives, 4.0 international license.
From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, your annual review. Hello, Jonathan. My apologies. This email is a little later than I'd hoped. I've had some minor computer trouble. Technology can be confounding, can't it? I'm sure you, like I, as an older member of staff, appreciate having the support of the younger generation to help when things go awry. Naturally, I am relieved to hear that your experience working over the last 12 months here with us at the Institute has all been equally rewarding and enjoyable. However, it falls to me to give you some feedback I've collected on your performance. I hope you will take this to heart and use it to improve your future performance. I've been informed you can be a little bit lax with returning books to the library on time. Given all the departments share that resource, it's important to renew your loans, let the staff know if you need them for longer than expected. Whilst our policy is to reduce the amount of unnecessary phone calls, it's been fed back to me that your telephone manner with your colleagues can be a little brusque. And it has finally been noticed that the archives team takes a rather relaxed attitude towards the Institute dress code. As the head archivist, your job is to set an example and direct them to be the best they can be. Perhaps a reminder that we are a professional research organisation and the dress code exists for a reason would not go amiss. A certain member of staff here at the Institute has repeatedly requested you cease contact with them. I trust this directive will not be ignored. Does the above feel like accurate feedback to you, Jonathan? I would hate for you to feel as though I was being unfair without giving you a chance to reflect. However, sometimes we need the input of others, as it can be hard to truly know ourselves. It's impossible to know everything, after all. You might wish to do some reading about the Johari window, a model through which people can learn previously unknown things about themselves and their relationships with others. Magnus Institute Instant Messenger, Jonathan Sims. Conversation history with Alice Tonner. John? John, are you there? Basira and I were going for a drink if you want to come. Haven't seen you in hours. I'm fine. Oh, Christ, what now? I'm not moping. I didn't say you were, although now you're so quick to deny it. Right, I'm coming into your office and then we're going to the pub, and that's final.
Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy.
From Jonathan Sims to Peter Lucas. Subject, your annual review. Peter, thank you for taking the time to provide me with such useful and honest feedback. I will certainly use this to improve my performance going forward. I spent some time last night with my team practicing my telephone greeting, so you can rest assured I am taking this matter as seriously as it deserves. It is certainly true that a person can never know everything, and of the things that I do know, it can be difficult to fully assess what is useful information and what should be discarded. For example, I know that last year, the United Sunset Holdings Corporation paid exactly £0 in tax by exploiting a number of loopholes in the system. I don't think this is relevant to my career development, but it is interesting. The things you learn when you do some self-reflection. John. From p.lucas@yahoo.co.uk to nathaniellucas@gmail.com. Subject, Sunset. Nathaniel, just to confirm, United Sunset Holdings is entirely detangled from Solar Shipping and the Lucas family, and no one could connect the two using actual physical evidence? Peter. From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, Riri, your annual review. Hello, Jonathan. Your attitude towards feedback and self-improvement does you credit. There is one more important part of your review, the responsibility of which I will leave in your hands. 1. Write objectives. Use the discussions you've had to write 3 to 4 key development objectives for the next 12 months. These should be SMART. That's an acronym, John. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-limited. And you ideally want your reports to take the lead in coming up with their own goals, as that'll inspire them to work towards them. Do, of course, get in touch if you would like my support in any way. Kind regards,
Oof.
Peter.
Oof.
Or with kind regards.
Uh-oh.
That's coins between the knuckles. From Jonathan Sims to Peter Lucas. Subject, re. Your annual review. Hi, Peter. After much careful thought and continued self-reflection, my proposed development objectives for the year ahead are...
Hang on a second. Pause a second here. Please go and look at this particular paragraph on AO3. That's all I'm going to say.
Work to minimize future fatalities within the Institute by continuing to monitor the potential threat of all entities and those who work for them. 2. Prevent the performance of any further rituals across all the entities, and in doing so, save the world.
Only John would make Save the World a development
Objective
goal.
2 as well. I should keep this as a development goal for the rest of my career life, which are now the same thing. 3. Improve my relationships with management. Your earnest and conscientious encouragement throughout this entire review process has made me consider that this is an important goal for me. I will therefore make it my objective to treat the Institute management with exactly as much respect and support as they have always shown me. 4. Develop my telephone skills. I trust these are satisfactory and in keeping with what you expected, John. From nathaniellucas@gmail.com to p.lucas@yahoo.co.uk. Subject, Resunset. Peter, they would be far more successfully detangled, as you put it, if you did not email my Gmail account mentioning them both in the same bloody sentence. Please delete this, then go into your sent items and delete that, and then delete your deleted items. Nathaniel. From Peter Lucas to Jonathan Sims. Subject, your annual review. Jonathan, extremely satisfactory. I think we can consider your review concluded. Kind regards, Peter. Magnus Institute Instant Messenger, Jonathan Sims. Conversation history with Alice Tonner. I'm finally free of my annual review, I'm still trapped by the Institute, the Eye, and the upcoming possible end of the world, and the general day-to-day horror that is our lives. But I'll take the small victories, as there are so very few of them. How'd you manage that one? My dazzling personality. I'll send you my objectives so you can hold me to account during this important phase in my career development. He's going to try and kill you when he gets the chance. You do know that, right? Honestly, Daisy, at this point, he's going to have to join the back of an extremely long queue.
Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy.
Magnus Institute Instant Messenger. Martin Blackwood. Conversation history with Peter Lucas. Hello, Martin. I have another technical question for you, I'm afraid. I've been asked to delete my deleted items in Yahoo emails, but this doesn't make any sense to me. Surely they've already been deleted. Hi, Peter. Emails don't delete right away. They keep a copy in case you change your mind. I've still got your password from all that stuff with your credit card details getting stolen. Do you want me to log in and sort it for you? Oh, not to worry. This is private family business. I'll manage it myself. Of course, Peter. You have a phone call at 11 a.m. though, so you might have to wait an hour to actually do the deleting. Isn't this a call you could take? Afraid not, sorry. Something about shipping manifests on the Tundra, you said when I set it up. I will absolutely, definitely stay out of your emails until you've deleted this private family business, though.
Smile emoji. Please remember, your messages will be monitored in accordance with Institute IT policy and archived in accordance with Institute archival policy.
Notes. And then Martin totally didn't break into Peter's emails or do anything untoward at all with Peter's private family business or email passwords.
And revenge was had.
And revenge was had. This is a glorious series of fanfiction. Thank you so much, Shiny.
And we'll include it in the stream notes, yeah?
Yes, we will. That is all we have for you, folks. We are next going to be online on Sunday when we will be continuing.
No.
I'm lying. I'm lying to you like a lying liar.
What's on Saturday?
On Saturday...
Christmas.
Horror Christmas. Horror Christmas, everybody. We go on a trip to the little town of Little Hope.
Where no bad decisions at all will be made.
Where everything will be fine and lovely. And all good choices that can be made assuredly will be.
Oh,
And-
we're all gonna die.
I know. Shut up, rat chap. And then on Sunday, we'll be doing some more Windbound, where there will be some butt stabbing and consumption of burgers and further exploration of the wild, wild sea. And then next Wednesday, come back here with tissues.
Oh, yeah. Emotional support
Oh,
plushies.
boy. Yeah, emotional support plushies, the whole thing. Yeah, for the conclusion of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who's contributed. Thank you to everybody who's been in the chat. Thank you for listening. This is a highlight of our week, and we're so glad to have you here. And we will see you next time.
Button.